early stages of any business's viability is critically important, and enlisting the advice and counsel of a business mentor could be one of the most crucial business decisions you'll ever make, according to a recent study published by American Express. It found 61% of small business owners find it important to mentor others, while another 58% of entrepreneurs and business owners find it a personal importance to mentor younger entrepreneurs to ensure that they're placed on a road to success. For Maura Walters, she spent nearly 10 years in national media as both a journalist and magazine and copywriter. Her passion now, as she made a transition in 2020, is to help freelancers, specifically women, grow their businesses with ease and eliminate the debilitating effects of burnout. Walters says that so many freelancers are caught in the perpetual hamster wheel of burnout and concerned about where their next paycheck is coming from. And she wants to be there to lend a helping and encouraging hand to help women get out of the feast or famine mentality and become the profitable and passionate business owners they were always meant to be. Walters has been in those very shoes, always worrying about the next assignment and finishing it on time and wondering where her next paycheck was coming from as well. In 2020, she finally decided to put her passion for helping other women in business forward, and she launched her own copywriting business, which also has an element of content strategy as well. And in her first year in business, Walters was able to take home more than 6 figures. How did she do that, you ask? Well, I'm glad you inquired, because Walters joined me this week to tell me how women, freelance business owners, can turn their dreams into a profitable and sustainable business. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn how do you help freelancers grow their business. Great to see you, and happy Monday to you.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk more about it.
Absolutely. So, Maura, I know you're a content strategist, and you're also a copywriter who helps freelancers sort of elevate their businesses. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about all the great work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I'm a brand strategist. I really, I started out as a copywriter simply because that was, what I knew how to do. I was a journalist for 10 years. So writing and editing was really like in my bones. My business has morphed so much because I have learned in working with various clients that there are so many ways to tell a story and to use stories to build a brand. My business is founded on the belief that everybody has a story to tell, and that when we are really elevating a brand's why they exist, why they do what they do, who they are trying to serve, it is so much easier to build that audience and create a real connection. So that is one half of my business, and then the other half of my business, as someone who is self-employed, who started this thing on my own, I am really passionate about mentoring, specifically female founders, and giving them the foundations they need to be successfully self-employed. So it's a lot, but it's interesting because the two sides of my business often coalesce. And when I'm working on a content strategy project, I'm also doing a lot of mentoring as well. So it's really, really fun. It's really rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you say that you started in journalism, Mara, because, I originally went to college to become a sports reporter. So isn't
Oh
that fun?
my gosh, that's so funny. My husband would love you. Yeah, that's really funny. My husband is a journalist as well. And I feel like, sports are one of his biggest passions. He doesn't get to do that too much in his career, but that's so cool.
Yeah, and it's funny that you said that everyone has a story to tell. One of the sayings that I live my, and one of the reasons I wanted to become a journalist originally was because I always believe that everyone has a story to tell, and they deserve a objective platform to tell it. Right. So that's
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's so interesting because I think that doing that for 10 years made me really good at identifying what are the things that are going to resonate with people. What is the story here about your business or your nonprofit that people are really going to latch onto? And I think when you give people a reason to connect with your business, brand, or nonprofit, that's how you establish like real loyalty. That's how you get people evangelizing your brand and coming back to it and shopping from it and telling all their friends about it, and really being that sort of loyal consumer that we all want as business owners.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mara, we're coming to the end of March, and as you know, March is Women's History Month, and I know you work extensively with women entrepreneurs to elevate their business message. So I'm wondering, what does Women's History Month mean to you?
Well, empowering women is such, I would really say that's the foundation of my business. You are fortunate to live in a country where there is a federal mandated paid maternity leave, there is universal health care, but I have come to see from my own experience and from the women that I work with that, women and mothers specifically are very under in our country. There are not a lot of support systems for parents, for mothers specifically. The 9 to 5 model in this country is not really made to support mothers or people who have families who depend on them and who need them. And it has been a really like wonderful part of my career to be able to show women what is possible for them in their careers, to show them that they can build flexible schedules that allow them to spend time with their kids, that allow them to work with clients that they're really excited about, and that doesn't necessarily have to fall into this 9 to 5. You are in an office every single day. You are working this many hours a week, et cetera, because that model really doesn't work for most women. So that's like a really big part of it, and I feel especially lucky that I get to uplift so many female founders, so many women who have taken a chance on themselves to create their own businesses, to create a product that they think is really needed, or to develop a service that they think will really make an impact on the world. There's so many women doing incredible things who often just need the little bit of support with their messaging, or with their website copy, or with their investor pitch deck to get it off the ground. And I feel really inspired that I get to do that every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And Maura, I'm curious to also ask you about your role as a business mentor, and what does that mean to you to be an effective business mentor?
Yeah, so the people I primarily mentor are women. Not to say I won't mentor or men, I certainly will, but the people I primarily mentor are women who have left the traditional workforce for one reason or another, often not by choice, I should say. Often they were let go, often they just were pushed out because they had children and the schedule didn't work for them. And it is my job as a mentor to help them build a business, to help them continue to work and make money in a way that feels supportive, in a way that works for them. And we get into everything from what do you really want to do? How are you attracting clients? Who are the people you really want to work with? What are you charging for your services? How are you building a schedule that supports you? What should go in your contract? How are you invoicing, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the reason that means so much to me is I didn't have a roadmap when I first started doing this. And I think there's so many things about working for yourself that are amazing, but it is also very isolating. So being able to offer that advice, being able to share my own mistakes and to make that path a little bit easier for people, that's what really lights me up and means so much to me about the mentorship side of my business.
Yeah, absolutely. And Maura, you inspired me to ask you a question about business flexibility for women after COVID, because as I said, the traditional 9 to 5 is really being redefined. But after COVID, certainly the way that we view work and going into a traditional workplace has changed. So talk to me a little bit about business flexibility for women in particular, because it's a vitally important component of today's workforce, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important components. The whole model also has really been flipped on its head. And when the pandemic hit, I mean, the majority of people who left the workforce were women, and the people who identify as self-employed in America, at least, that population is growing rapidly, and the majority of people in that self-employed population are women and mothers. So as you can see, a non-flexible schedule, I mean, it's kind of bad for business, right? You lose a lot of talent when you don't offer any kind of flexibility. You lose a lot of professional opportunities when you don't offer that flexibility. And I think the pandemic really reinforced, it reminded people of what their priorities are, but also that, they can successfully do their jobs from home. They can successfully be there for their children and also, show up for work without, the drag of a commute or, needing to be in meetings that don't make a lot of sense for them. So I think, while it was certainly a crisis on many levels, it also gave people that clarity of actually, it's good for me to have breaks between meetings, and it's good for me to be able to walk outside in the sunshine and to, have the ability to be home and to be trusted to get my work done. I think it changed so much. And now, the companies that are not offering that are the ones that are going to be left behind, I think, and the ones that are going to lose out on a lot of talent. You have to be flexible now because employees demand it, and employees have those options now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I'll tell you just a very quick story. So I used to work as the lead job developer at the YMCA here in Windsor and Essex County, and I worked in a basement office, and my desk and my boss's desk was directly across from each other.
Yeah.
And I came into work one day and I got a crash course on work-life balance because I had emailed or responded to an email from my boss at 8 o'clock at night, and she's like,
Right.
she looked at me and she said, "You don't have to always reply to emails the second they come into your inbox." So
Yeah.
for the next week, she challenged me to close my laptop at 4:30 and not open it again until the next day at work. So work-life balance is really important, isn't it?
It's so important. And it's really amazing that you had a boss who encouraged you not to respond to emails immediately, because for most of the people I mentor, and as someone who was in the corporate world for over a decade, it was the opposite. Our leaders were supposed to be setting the tone. They were supposed to be reinforcing those boundaries, but they were the first to break them. When you are an employee and you get an email from a boss at 8 o'clock at night, of course, this is your superior. Of course, you're going to feel like you need to respond right away. And when I started working for myself, and when the women that I mentor left their jobs to work for themselves, we all had a lot of unlearning to do. Like, not every email is life or death. Not every email needs to be responded to immediately. And the second that you start eroding those boundaries, they are so difficult to re-implement. I always advise people that I mentor, establish your boundaries immediately with your clients. Don't try to do it after you're in a pattern of responding to emails on Saturdays and you're responding to emails at 10 o'clock, because you have set the expectation then for your client that you're always going to be available at those times. So boundaries are something I talk about so much. I teach a lot of classes on boundaries, and they are the easiest thing to erode. They are the easiest thing to chip away at. And so they just need constant nurturing and reinforcing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Maura, I know, as you've mentioned a couple of times, you spent about a decade in national media. You've worked in magazine writing also. So before you started your business, so I'm curious to ask you about making the career pivot and taking a leap of faith when you started your own business, and any advice you would have for women or first-time entrepreneurs who may be in the same boat that you once were.
Yeah. So, I should say I was one of those people who, I grew up as a kid with one dream. I thought that my destiny was to be an editor-in-chief at a magazine. I never considered another career path. And I took a very traditional path to get there. I wrote for my school newspaper from the time I was a freshman in high school. I deliberately, chose a college that had an excellent journalism program. I contributed to, every, newspaper article that I could. I did a lot of work outside of college while I was there, working for local papers and things like that. I just thought, this is what I'm going to do. There is no other path for me. It took being, I was let go from my dream job in magazines. I lost my job along with, thousands and thousands of people. I think it's very, obvious that, the publishing industry is not what it once was. And, but I was let go in like 2008 during the recession. And so I knew that the only way to continue paying my very expensive rent in New York City and to continue writing and building something was to figure it out for myself. And I understood that I was very good at telling stories. I was very good at pinpointing the messages that resonated with people. And I was also really passionate about a lot of brands, a lot of female-founded brands. I knew that there was more stability in that kind of work than in the publishing world, where literally every year in magazines, I was expected to do more and more and more, but there was less money and less opportunity. And by the time I really took stock of my career and what I wanted to do, the publishing world looked so different than what I originally thought it was. We were slaves to algorithms and SEO, and we were publishing a lot of content that felt meaningless. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this doesn't feel stable. This doesn't feel fun. I'm bopping around from like freelance job to freelance job. Like, I really want to build something. I really want to take my writing and editing skills and translate that into something that's really going to make a difference for this small female founded brand or this nonprofit. And I started to see the real results of that work. You know, when you work in magazines, you publish stories and like, you hope somebody reads them. You hope that they're resonating with people and they're making a difference, but you don't know. You know, when I write a grant letter for a nonprofit, when I perfect a pitch deck for, you know, a small business, they're looking to take things to the next level, I see how my writing and editing really changes what's possible for them. And that has been an amazing lesson in making that pivot, going out on my own, but leaning into the things that I knew I was really good at.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I'm talking to you, Maura, I'm reflecting back to the end of President Biden's State of the Union address when they talked about what has him most optimistic about the future of the country. And they said possibilities. And I know for you that's a big thing, that when you work with freelancers, to see their possibility of their own potential. So talk to me about working with freelancers and the roadmap that you have them create so that they don't have to worry, as you say, where their next paycheck is coming from, and how they can really build some stability as well.
Yeah. So the real, first of all, I love how you talk about possibility. And I think that is something that you need to come back to again and again as an entrepreneur, you know, again and again, in order to have that resilience, is like remembering like what you have accomplished in the past on your own, and remembering like that there is so much that is open to you and so many clients that are available to you, as long as you don't have your blinders on. I think when you start getting panicked about money, when you start thinking there's only one type of client that I'm willing to work with, you have your blinders on to other things that are possible for you. So that is my, you know, first sort of order of business, is like taking off those blinders and thinking about where are these potential clients that you want to work with? How can we talk to them? How can we tweak the messaging on your website or in your resume to really go after the people that you want to work with? But the bigger trick to being in business for yourself and doing so for the long haul and keeping clients in your orbit for the long haul is fewer one-off projects, more long-term consulting offers that solve a lot of problems for your clients. So I work with my freelance mentees to help them sort of lean into all of their talents, lean into all of their skills, and to make them really, really good listeners. Because when you are listening to a prospect, they could come to you about a website project, for example. But if you are listening to the things that they're telling you, you will also pick up on a bunch of other things that they need in their business and how you can help them. And I work with my clients to come up with an offer that doesn't just solve one thing for their prospects. It solves many things. It is like a monthly retainer. It is long-term work, and it is so much more sustainable, and I would say more fun, to have 3 long-term clients than 10 one-off projects that are making you feel crazy and that don't pay you enough and are just going to keep you on that hamster wheel. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I tell you, return business is the best business you can get, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there are ways to do that. You know, a lot of my clients they'll end an engagement and they won't ask their happy client for a referral, you know, and like, you should absolutely do that. You know, don't close a door once a project is over, or they will leave an engagement and, you know, not really think about, oh, you know, there are a bunch of other things I could do for this client. In our work together, it was so clear that, say, they needed a social media strategy or they needed some help with their newsletter. Like, I can do that for them, and I think that's the point about staying open to possibility. That's the point about seeing, what your clients really need that they aren't even telling you, and keeping them coming back and paying you, and servicing them in like a really, really useful way where they can see your value every day.
It's all about solving problems, isn't it?
It's all about solving problems. My number one piece of advice to anyone who has a website, and that is most of us, this is true if you are a solopreneur, this is true if you run a big business. Your business needs to articulate the problems that you solve for people. Your website copy, it's not about you. It is about the people, the clients that you want to attract. And the number one thing they want to know is, how are you going to solve my problems? If you can solve people's problems, you will have consistent work.
Well, so outside of doing this podcast, I also do some motivational speaking. And one of the things that I always tell people, it's not about me. I'm here to solve your problems, right?
Yeah. And my job as a mentor is to not necessarily to like tell my clients what to do, but to like pull back the curtain and to shed a light on, some blind spots that they have in their business, or some things that they could potentially be doing differently. And we like solve those problems in their business together.
Yeah, and diving in, because I know you run a bunch of mentoring programs throughout the year, and you also offer one-on-one coaching, but at the root of your coaching, as you say, it's all about providing a business strategy and mindset, and really having an honest conversation about what your clients need and the problems that they're solving. So tell me about your coaching sessions and the importance of really being authentically honest with your clients as well.
Yeah. So I run a number of different, there are a number of different ways to work with me. So I have a bunch of one-on-one clients who work with me for like 6 months to really figure out like, what is this business and how am I growing it? And then I also offer group programs. They're 12 weeks long, and you are really learning the foundations of being a business for yourself. And every week we talk about some sort of fundamental element, whether that is what to charge for your services, how to market yourself on social media, how to craft an elevator pitch, et cetera, et cetera. And, in that work, we do, a lot of this is centered around mindset, but it is also centered around money and marketing. And, it is my job to sort of lovingly challenge them when I see that they are doing things in their business that aren't really working for them. It is also my job to show them what is possible, to have them get really clear on, why are you in business for yourself? Because it's not easy, a 9-to-5 path with the stability of a paycheck every 2 weeks is certainly like the easier, safer way to go. So what is your why? Why are you doing this? Is it for the freedom? Is it for the big visions you have of making an impact on the world? I think you have to know why you're doing this. I also help them establish their annual revenue goals, because when you know what you need to make in a year, that trickles down to how much you need to make in a quarter. That trickles down to what you're charging for your services and like how you come up with your rates. So you're not just blindly saying, oh, I guess I could take on this project for $50 an hour. That's how sort of like a freelancer might think. I want you to think about how a business owner would approach an offer like that. And I think once you sort of like step into that power and start looking at things through the lens of a business owner, it becomes easier to find those dream clients. It becomes easier to come up with offers. It becomes easier to say with conviction, like, my rate is $225 an hour, and to not be afraid to say that. So again, my work is centered around a lot around marketing, a lot around money, and a lot around mindset.
Well, I tell you, once you get the resilience piece down and what you're offering and what your why is. It's like riding a bike. The more you do it, the better you get at it, right?
Absolutely. And it takes practice. It is very scary to say a rate out loud that you've never charged before. But the more you can practice doing that, and the more you can do so and just stay quiet and let your recipient take that in and process if they can, afford to pay you that much, it becomes so much easier. Like, we just have to get comfortable saying like the new rate, and we just have to get comfortable talking about the new offer. And all of that comes down to repetition. All of that comes down to like experience.
Absolutely. And Maura, I'm going to share just one final story about
Yeah. I love a good story.
myself. So, Maura, I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. It simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. And I found out at 9 years old after leaving a meeting in a hospital conference room with the doctor who had performed all of my surgeries that I wouldn't be able to walk for the duration of my life without assistance. And then the next day, I was 9 years old and in fourth grade, and I didn't really process at the time that this would be the changing point in my life. But the next day, I went back to school, and I credit my middle school principal, Dr. Carol Crewley, for changing the trajectory of my life, because I had went back to school and I was called down to the principal's office the next day because she knew why I wasn't in school the previous day, and she knew that I was going to London. And so when I got to her office, she had everyone assigned to my file, from teachers to social workers to therapists. And my parents were there. And in the middle of her office, she left a big empty space for my wheelchair. And I had gone through the story of what the doctor had told me the previous day. And she looked at me and she said, the only limitations on your life are the artificial ones that you place on yourself. And you're capable of doing anything you want. Your portrait of success is just going to be a little bit different than everybody else's. So that's a long-winded way of asking you about business resiliency and how you define a business resilience.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, you have such an incredible story of resiliency. Mine, my advice here sounds like a little silly, but I sort of define business resiliency as like continuously recommitting to yourself, continuously coming back and realizing, or remembering like what you have accomplished on your own. As I said, this is really not an easy path. Having a mentor, being in community with other people who get it, like certainly makes it a lot easier. But I find that like when things get really hard, I recommit to my why. I remember why I'm doing this. I remind myself what I have generated and created in months past. And it comes back to that word possibility, like sometimes I think we need to write down. For me, like I'm a very visual person, and I'm a words person. And so
me too. That's why I went to school, right?
Yeah, exactly. So often for me, like writing down, like, God, like look at the things I've accomplished since I started this business in my kids' playroom while they napped during the pandemic, in 2020. Look how much I've built since then. And I think when you can view it that way, when you can like really like look at the list of accomplishments, it gives you the fortitude to keep on going. But it's a continual like recommitment to yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. And Maura, I also shared that story about myself because you may not know, but March is also National Disability Awareness Month. So I'm curious, when you do business inclusivity for folks with disabilities, what do you think of, and how important is it, do you think it is, to celebrate the accomplishments of individuals with disabilities as well.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think it is hugely important. I think, going back on my soapbox about the corporate world and the 9 to 5 world, I think that we have a very rigid ideas, at least in America, of what like a good worker looks like, which is why you see so many environments that are hostile to people with disabilities, or hostile to people who can't, who are not able to work in like a traditional, in a traditional manner. And I think, diversity, inclusivity, bringing a variety of perspectives to anything you do is a smart business choice. It is good for business. We need a variety of people and walks of life to create a better world and to create brands that people really care about. So in my own business, this isn't like specifically related to disabilities, but in my own business, I take on a pro bono project for a Black-owned business or nonprofit every quarter. I think it is really important to uplift marginalized communities, whatever those communities may be. And that's been a foundation of my business from the get-go. I think as a white able-bodied woman, I have a responsibility to uplift people who are not as fortunate as I am. And that's, I think it's really incumbent upon all business owners to figure out, like, how am I going to be more inclusive? How am I going to embrace others? And like, how am I going to give back in the world? But again, like, different walks of life and different perspectives and viewpoints just make for more well-rounded companies, more well-rounded culture, and like a better world in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And, Maura, I have 2 questions left for you. And the first is, if I gave you, say, $1 million to produce a commercial on business longevity and sustainability and really surviving in business, what do you think you would start with when achieving a message of how to achieve business freedom? So how would you lay out that commercial as sort of a roadmap?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, I think first it would be, figuring out what you're passionate about. I think if being good at something and loving something are 2 very different things. So, I, am all about encouraging people to follow the things that really light them up, but showing them how to make money doing that as well.
There's a difference between the 2, isn't there?
Yeah, there really is. But when you can find like the intersection, like that's really golden. And I think the other tricks to real longevity are finding a community. Community is so important, which is why I, always run these group programs. Finding a community of people who get where you are, who can support you, who can be your cheerleaders is everything when it comes to working for yourself. And then really leaning into the things that make you special and you unique. At the end of the day, there are a lot of people who do what I do, but my clients gravitate toward the person that I am, when they are making a decision to work with me. And I think it's really important and valuable to lean into what makes you special, not to be afraid to show off your personality, the things that make you tick, the things that you value, as a means to landing more business. A personality, showing that off is really good for business. And then always figuring out, like, how is my business making an impact on the world? What is my mission here? How am I giving back to my community? What is like the do good component of what I am doing? Because it can't all be for profit. It has to be for making the world better too. Those are the clients that I love working with.
Yeah, then there's value and strength of diversity, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And my final question for you has to do with your own individual and personal legacy and how you want your legacy to be defined from a professional and personal perspective.
I think it's that I showed women like me what they could do and how powerful they are. I am very, very passionate about specifically working with mothers to show them that they can have really satisfying careers. They can do things outside of the domestic sphere that light them up. They don't have to be relegated to just one role. And, if I can leave this world, having done anything, it is inspiring, inspiring mothers to, take a different path for themselves, showing them that there is so much out there for them, that their careers can continue to flourish, that they can do things that they really love while also raising little humans. That would be, that really is like my purpose here. My purpose here is to show mothers specifically like what else is possible for them.
Well, I always call it leading from a position of strength, right? That's important, isn't it?
Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely. And Maura, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so the best, I'm very, very active on both LinkedIn and Instagram. But I have, I have a pretty, solid community on Instagram, and you can follow me there at Maura_Walters. And that has all the information about my website, about ways to work with me. I share a ton of useful content for people who work for themselves. I'm hosting classes all the time, and, follow me there to stay on top of it all.
Well, fabulous. I have to tell you, this was a most energetic and fun way to start my meeting. So I want to thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank you for bringing the energy and enthusiasm for our conversation. And I also want to thank you for the good work that you do to empower women in business. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated. And I want to thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you so much, Kevin. This was such a pleasure, and also just like the best way to start my week. I really appreciate it.